Hi folks, I just need one moment. For some reason the audio mixers did not transfer over to the other screen. So I'm going to try to get that fixed up. Give me one moment. There's the mic. That should be good. And be right back for the other one. Okay, testing. 1, 2, 1, 2. How are we sounding, folks? Dade, can you hear me? Nay, can you hear me? Should I turn the volume down on the music? Testing. 1, 2. And I'll probably need to do this for the other thing too. Sounds good? Am I loud enough over the music? Music too loud? Okay. Music sounds good. Okay, cool. Hey folks, sorry about that. Welcome friends and foes. BearNPC here. Baron to you all that know me. Now music is way too loud. I got you. Okay. Let me do... We'll put the music at 70. Does that sound better? Testing. 1, 2, 1, 2. I can turn it down more if need be. It's so weird having my camera up here right now. It's kind of loud in my head, but let me see. Okay. I have other options. Okay. And then I'm going to turn this to 70. Does that sound better for you? Hopefully that's better. I will wait on the content for a little bit longer until we get this sound stuff figured out. So, one moment. I'm sorry. I am such a noob at this stuff, and I hope everything's okay. I thought I heard a slam. It's a bit better? Okay, I can turn it down more. Actually, let me turn that back up and turn that down. We'll go there. Sounds better in my ears. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to try it here. Let me pull it up on my phone so I can get a feel just in case too. Sorry. Whenever it's not video games, it's adding new audio in, and it's always a problem. Nope, that is... Okay. Okay. That is the randomizer. Let's see if I can get... There we go. Testing. 1, 2. Testing. 1, 2. Oh, okay. Testing. Okay, y'all. I'm sorry about that. I am sorry. Getting all the audio worked out. I think I'm good. Other than the audio keeps freezing because it's from an older hard drive. I'm guessing that's the reason why. Welcome, friends and foes. BearNPC here, Crestfallen LARP. I know I already did that, but yeah. So the thought process on this stream is... Hello? The thought process on this stream is to discuss new player stuff. We've had a couple new players show up at Crestfallen. You need Little Bears, DJ Mixer. Yeah, no. We've had a couple new players show up at the game, and that's awesome. But everybody comes to LARPs in different ways, and Skill Tree put out a video where they're talking about things they've learned about LARP and stuff like that. And because it's right before Christmas and I didn't feel like starting into Final Fantasy 13 yet, I thought I'd try to force myself into this LARP content that I've kind of been putting off. And a lot of the reason I've already kind of described it, and talking at a camera instead of talking to people is difficult. And I naturally have like a monotone, monotonous kind of voice whenever I'm reading off a script. In general anyway. So I fight with, the self-consciousness of doing this kind of stuff, but I really want to put out more content that helps out new players into Crestfallen LARP and LARP in general. And a big part of that really is finding out what you want in a LARP and taking a look at different LARPs and really finding what you want to do and whatnot. And I really wanted to go over some of the stuff in regards to Crestfallen because we're different, but we're the same as a lot of different... It's complicated, and all LARP is kind of complicated. There are the national games like your Neros and your Dystopia Risings and other bigger games that have multiple chapters. You have your big LARPs that have thousands of people and cost hundreds of dollars. You have your small parlor LARPs, all that kind of stuff. And it's really a lot, and it takes a lot of courage to come out to a game and try it out. And so any ways that we can lessen that burden on people is something that we want to do. But we want to do that putting the best foot forward, but without watering down our content. So one thing that Skill Tree really talked about in their video, either today or yesterday, was about the different types of LARP. So I figured I'd start there. Crestfallen is more of a one-day LARP to a weekend LARP, where you go camping. We're changing sites currently for this year. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So some of my stuff is going to be in regards to our old site. Some of it's going to be the one-day site and whatnot. So we are more of in that camping facet that Skill Tree was kind of talking about. And they were talking about according to them, there were 3 different types of LARPs. There's parlor LARPs, which are it takes one day and you're there for a couple hours and you take part in this LARP. there are the weekend camping LARPs, and then there's the big, like, week-long blockbuster LARPs. We're kind of that middle ground. So we're not the most expensive game in town. We're not the cheapest game in town. We're, you know, you can come out for a day or 2 days and try to immerse yourself in the game and take part in it. There are all kinds of different genres of LARP, and Crestfallen I've named as frontier fantasy as its general style. Whenever I'm talking frontier, I'm basically talking the fact that you are exploring a newer, wilder area, or you are in a town that is not super well established. So you're not in the kingdom center. You're not, part of the game is partially a survival game, whether it's crafting items or things of that nature, working together as a town to really boost each other up, and not necessarily and everybody for their own kind of interaction. That's not necessarily forced, but it's one of those things. It's a main point of, you starting off can't do everything yourself. You cannot be the best fighter, the best rogue, the best crafter, the best merchant. You according to the way the game works, you can't do it. Fantasy is just that. There are fantastical elements, whether it is your typical fantasy stuff in regards to dwarves and elves and swinging magical swords, or whether it gets into the more odd technology-based stuff. We eventually will get there, but it's one of those things that I want that to be a slow burn progression. Think the D&D adventures where you're a fantasy character and you happen upon a spaceship randomly, and how would that fantasy character interact with that kind of stuff? We don't want that to be the norm. We want the feel to be Wild West meets fantasy. That is the intended baseline. So that's really where we're starting off at Crestfallen. We're not doing full week things. We're doing 1 to 2 days of camping / living in cabins, interacting with plot and things of that nature. Now, whenever it comes down to it, lots of players have lots of different questions on what do you need to know, what do you need to bring, building a character, things of that nature. And first and foremost, I have to say, ideally, we have a bunch of resources that are available for that. We have our website, which has all of the main rules sections on it. And reading a rulebook is dry. Some people love doing that, and they'll read a rulebook cover to cover, and other people want to learn the game at the game. That's perfectly acceptable. I don't have a major problem with that. But the big thing is that everybody learns differently. I went to college to be an elementary ed teacher. And for a number of reasons, I haven't done that with my life. I went into food stuff and whatnot. But everybody learns differently, and everybody picks up from different things. So I'm hoping that these kind of videos can be a resource. The difficult part is that you, the prospective new player, want to learn specific things, and I can't make enough videos that will get those points across to you clearly. So I highly suggest get on our Discord, ask questions, go on our website, check over the rules. If you need help with any of that stuff, feel free to ask. We're here as a resource, myself and our staff members. Please don't private message, just ask in the general Discord. because players can help out, things of that nature, and everybody's generally very, very friendly. I don't like private messages on the sheer fact that it's information that other people might want to ask, and so it's better to get that info out. But yeah. So let's get into kind of how we structure our events, what you can kind of expect coming to an event, all that kind of stuff. So let me switch over to this. Okay. So our website, let me, of course, and it restructured everything. Hold on while I zoom this down. Okay. So our website, crestfallenlarp.com, has all of this stuff. Whenever you come to the main page, it normally tells you the next event, but we're in the middle of scheduling for next year. So you can normally click right here for the next event. But up here at the top, there is a, let me scroll that on over so people can see. I know I'm going to be in the way for some of this, so I apologize in advance. Our schedule is listed right here. The rules section is here. Our blog posts, which we have not updated much recently. And then basic info on the game world Catalosa is here. The search is kind of wonky. You'll get a lot of different stuff. So I tend to use the tabs here at the top. But looking at the schedule, we have a bunch of different event types. Discord Hangouts, we used to do on a regular basis. I would love to get back into those. But it seemed for the most part, people showed up for the benefits, and there wasn't much value to the actual Discord Hangout. That might change whenever we have more newer players or things of that nature. But one-day events, current cost is $25 for a player character, free to NPC. NPCing is playing the monsters. You don't actually get to make your own character. But this goes through all of the information kind of about what our one-day adventures are. Normally it's a couple hours worth of gameplay where it's very structured. We have different ways that you can interact with plot. Those will change from event to event depending on who's running and what kind of style we want. Gives a tentative schedule here of when we'd be on site, when we'd be off site. We don't provide any food for 1 days, but normally we try to go out to eat together as a group after a 1 day. And then your character benefits, whether you're playing a character or an NPC. We have, I'll get to that in a second. Next, we have our one-day tavern event, which we have our tavern event coming up on, I believe it is January 31st. January 31st of 2026 is going to be our tavern event. And the site that we use, I'll show that in a little bit here, is really, really cool. It is in Freeport, Pennsylvania. Cost is currently $25 listed here. Non-player characters are free, but we are not looking for any NPCs for our tavern night. So it's only player characters are allowed to register. It's designed mainly for 30 people. That's the max that generally fits in that area. You register on our registration page, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. But it shows our tentative setup and all of that kind of stuff. We do a potluck for our tavern night, which is a lot of fun. It works out really well. We have a bunch of stuff already listed on our for our potluck, so I'm looking forward to that in January. But there are still plot things that go on with our tavern night. It is counter to a lot of LARPs do like a winter feast or festival or a thing with a dance. And that was always a little too stuffy and formal for my kind of thought process. And I like the feel of an old school tavern. So that's kind of the feel there. Then we get into the 2-day town events. We're hoping to use Raccoon Creek State Park for the upcoming season. I'm not sure. We'll know that schedule by February. So whenever I have more info on that, I will definitely let folks know. But that is where you come to our event. You stay in the cabin overnight, Friday into Saturday, Saturday into Sunday. We're off site by noon. Noon is the new latest offsite. I'm gonna have to change some of this stuff, but all of that stuff is listed in our schedule page, listed as event type. So if you have any questions on that, you can go and read what we have written down, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask us on our Discord. 2-day events are $60 for PCs, $30 for PCing one day, and free for NPCs currently. As long as we can keep affording to do that, we're definitely going to. I don't want to raise prices. I'm not looking to make money for me. This is all the money that Crestfallen makes goes back into Crestfallen to make sure that we can keep running events year after year, including paying for our liability insurance and paying for the sites and paying for maintenance on the foam boffer weapons and things like that. Yeah, so that's the event types that we have. After that, where do we run events? We have a couple places. First off, South Park. We're currently using Willow Tree Pavilion, but we're looking at a different pavilion for next season. So we'll have that updated information as soon as we get scheduled for next season. But it will show the actual pavilion, the map to it, and we actually list the nearby food and stuff like that, including GPS, website, and all of that kind of stuff. Additionally, for other one-day sites, South Park is in Pittsburgh. We also use Northmoreland Park, which is in the quit freezing. There we go. Which is in the Apollo area near me. But we have all of the information listed about Northmoreland Park here. We tend to use two different pavilions, either Pavilion 6 or Pavilion 4. So we list a bunch of the information here, including the site cost, like how much it costs for us to rent. I think it's up to $150 now. The GPS coordinates and stuff that's nearby in case you have a breakdown, you have a weapon problem, you need some food beforehand, you have a car breakdown, or health stuff. So we list all that for that site. For our upcoming tavern event, we're using Lobby Hall. Like I said, in Freeport, PA. It has this wonderful, like rustic tavern kind of feel. Sadly, there's a big screen TV over that now, so we tend to cover that up with a tarp or similar things. But the room is really, really cool. They got rid of the carpeting in there, but it has an old school feel, and it really feels kind of like an old school tavern, and we really enjoy that. Like I said, it fits about 30 guests there, but we're there for one day, and we're doing the potluck for food. And then previously we used Knotted Pines. I'm going to have all of this information I'm going to take Knotted Pines down whenever we are officially done with the season and get the new schedule up. But this will have all the information about our new site, hopefully with all of the information about the cabins and things like that. So if there's ever any question on what amenities are on the site, whether there are showers or not, whether there are bathrooms or not, whether you need to bring sleeping bags or whether there are mattresses, whether there are cots, all that kind of stuff is generally listed on our sites page. And if you think there's anything that needs to be added, feel free to let us know. But if you have any questions as a new player, I highly suggest checking out those resources. Yet again, it's on our schedule page, listed under sites. Makes it easy. And then we can add stuff if there's anything that we've missed, because we've been LARPing for years and we don't realize that we know a lot of stuff and we assume other people know what we do. And that is a wrong assumption. So we're trying our best to rectify that. So yeah, that is all of our event types and kind of how our site layout is. Whenever it comes to going to LARPs, there's a lot of different variation you can have on where you're staying, what you should bring with you. And there are a lot of videos and a lot of guides that kind of direct you on this kind of stuff. Some of the stuff is what people would say common sense. If you have medicine, bring medicine. If you need a breathing apparatus or whatnot, you should bring that with you. Any adapters, things like that. If you wear glasses, bring glasses. But some of the stuff is not so much common sense. And so sometimes we need prompted to, hey, we need to remind you of this, that, and the other thing. So if you have any questions on what to bring, feel free to reach out and ask. But we do have a number of, we have, I think, a guide listed on the blog. And we also have other suggestions. I always try to bring at least 2 to 3 pairs of clothes that are underneath costumes, so you can change out if you're not feeling particularly clean. Especially during the summer, whenever things get really, really sweaty, having extra clothes is great. If the weather's not looking good, plastic bags for between your sock layers, extra socks, an extra pair of boots, boots that fit, that have decent grip for going around in the wild. Highly suggested. Some games require in-period costuming. We do have some requirements, and you can find those in the rulebook. But for the most part, you can make a character that wears medieval clothing. You can make a character that has Western style clothing. And whenever it comes to boots, it is very much so your comfort and the waterproofness of the boots rather than having to be strictly in period. Just because some games are very particular on that. Safety is more important in my book. And whenever it comes down to it, in period boots are very, very expensive. Whenever it comes to props and things like that, let's just talk cost overall. Okay. Going to a LARP can be expensive. There's the cost for the event itself, but there's also the cost for food. There's also the cost for gas. There's also the cost for your costuming. There's also the cost for anything additional that you wish to do before or after the events. And so what we try to do is we try to keep our costs low to make it reasonable for people. That's why NPCing is for free. So if you're in a money crunch and you still want to play, you can, but there are all the other additional costs. We try to be as helpful and resourceful as we can. So we have people that are willing to help you with costuming things. We have some rental costume parts that you can request. You have to do so on our scheduling page before an event, so we know to pull it out of our trailer of goods, and what kind of stuff to bring, whether it is costuming, whether it is LARP weaponry, whether it is any number of things. We can't supply everybody, so we prioritize new players, players that are on a budget, players that have some monetary issues. But don't think that you're coming out for your first LARP event that you need to literally buy everything. There are people that are super helpful. They will lend you stuff. We can lend you stuff. Whenever it comes to food, everybody has been very, very awesome in helping each other out with food. We kind of do a potluck thing for our weekend events as well. And especially being in a new camp, we will probably continue that. So that's one of those things you will kind of want to get on our Discord and talk it over with people. And really interacting with the community is a huge part of joining a LARP. Our community is really small right now. That's great in some ways, and it's not so good in others. And we're trying our best to grow. And so it's really finding out what resources we can make available and with the time that we have. The other thing that we do is people can, whenever they are registering for events, there were different ways to gain points for their characters. We basically have an option if you are in financial dire straits and you want to play the game. You can request essentially funds to play the game that people have donated so other people can play. The best way I can think of it, there are those pizza places that have people prepay for pizza slices for people in need. We basically do that. We have a fund of money that people have been putting money into that can pay for people's events. We don't want people to take advantage of it super often, but sometimes people get in rough times and they just need a little help, and they need a little bit of an escape, and we want to be available for that if at all possible. Things get rough. And sometimes you need to just go out and have fun with your friends. And we try to back each other up whenever it comes to that kind of stuff. Let's see what's next. Game lore. This is something that we were discussing on our Facebook and we were discussing on our Discord just a little bit ago. Whenever I talked about those different types of LARPs earlier, a huge part of that is that whenever you have these blockbuster LARPs that are weeks long, you don't really have a lot of input on the story. There are these big plot points that happen that you as a group can kind of have an effect on, but you have very little to say or do in regards to that. And your plot is more based on what you and your close-knit friends kind of do. You're making your own fun. As opposed to some of the local LARPs, which have a very railroad type plot. You have the beginning, middle, and end of your story. And that happens every event. And sometimes that can feel a little too planned, and like you can't have an effect on that either. That's asking. I'm not worried about that. So in those two different types of LARP, it feels like you don't have much effect on the story. And Crestfallen is basically designed to be that train station kind of hub where plots leave start and stop, and the players can drive them as far as they would like. And then if they leave them be for too long, an NPC group might go and redirect it. So there's a lot of moving parts in regards to that. And a big portion of that is that we, as the plot team, do not want to push a bunch of plot onto players that leads them to believe that this is the main story plot. We want the players to kind of drive. So what that generally means is we have 4 or 5 or 6 different plot points that we will put information out for. And then it is up to the players to research and direct and drive the plots that they care about forward. But that doesn't mean the other plots aren't moving in the shadows. So for example, the past season, we had an undead plot line, we had a gnoll plot line, and we had a goblin plot line. We have other things going on in regards to that as well. But the players dealt with the undead plot line, and they dealt with the gnoll plot lines. But the goblin plot lines kind of, it was warned that things were getting bad, and the PCs didn't really look into it all that much. They fought the monsters, but they didn't look beyond that. And that's okay, but that just means that story kind of progresses on its own. So they dealt with 2 out of the 3, and that's why they saw the gnolls really didn't have much impact towards the end of the season. The undead disappeared, but the goblins were out in full force, and that had consequences. A lot of games will give out a lot of lore, and it's great for making starting characters, but it's also restrictive in certain ways. And at the end of the day, giving out, it's a lot of homework for new players that they feel they need to know all of this lore before they can actually even play the game. And if they show up not knowing that information, then they are behind even more. And I never want anybody to feel like that. I want people to show up to the game and feel like, okay, I know enough. I know the rules. I know enough of the rules that I can play the game. I know enough of the basic lore of the world that I can play the game. And then I will learn from there. Because not everybody wants to be the lore keeper. Not everybody wants to know all the knowledge. Sometimes people just want to go and swing a sword at something, or go off into the woods and gather resources, or sit at a forge and craft an item. Those are all things that you can and should be able to do in our game. And so having all this homework and all these things that you need to learn before you can play the game is really off-putting to me. And I want the people that enjoy that kind of stuff to learn that information in our research skills, because then they can give that information to other players that want to know but don't necessarily want to know everything, and they can drive the story if they want to. It's like in Dungeons and Dragons, the lore keepers giving information to the adventurers to push their story forward. Some people like to learn that information and figure things out. And I feel that if we give out too much information too quickly, then that kind of steps on those players' toes. Then they don't feel like the thing that they've figured out or done research for matters. And that makes that less viable. And then it makes the ones that are swinging swords the only important ones. And I never want the town type players to feel that way. yeah. So let's get into some basic information about the world of Catalosa, which is the world that Crestfallen uses. If you go to our website here, there's this Catalosa tab. And if you go to it, it shows the Olive Branch, Dracon Text, and Catalosa Gazetteer. And it's not a lot of information. That's kind of on purpose. Like I said, I don't want to overwhelm people. There's not a lot of stuff you need to memorize. But basically, the way the Olive Branch is just some little things that happened. Library mishap. All of the ink made its way out of the books, so most of the written knowledge is lost and forgotten. That was done on purpose. That is so that our plot team has enough flexibility to plant information there that we didn't necessarily foresee ahead of time, and have all kinds of fun different plots that can intersect. The best way I can put it is there are people that really get into the lore of Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or Star Trek or things of that nature. And if you try to play a tabletop role-playing game with those people and they know so much about the world, it makes it difficult if you do not know as much as they do, because they will contradict you at different points. You want them to feel cool for knowing that information. But sometimes that stands in the way of telling a cool story. And so by making it not as set in stone for the people to need to learn, that allows those truths to kind of be found out in game rather than be as solid. So, Ages by Memory is just a basic timeline of the world of Catalosa. And it goes by different ages. And the ages are different time spans. It could be 50 plus years. It could be thousands of years. All of that timeline is lost because it was written down in a bunch of places and then the ink disappeared. So this is just from memory what people could remember about things. And I like it for the fact that it gives the basic structure. It gives the basic content that you might need. But it doesn't tie to specific year here, specific year there. So we as plot can do different things with that content. It also goes along the calendar. The world of Catalosa is based on a 5-month kind of progression. And each month is a season. They're listed there. Each has 64 days. But basically, every time we get together for a Crestfallen event, 1 week has passed since the previous event. So if you missed an event, that's perfectly fine. You can normally ask other players, hey, what did I miss? What happened? For the most part, they will be friendly and tell you, or you might be able to buy a newspaper that gives you some basic information, or you might be able to interact with people on our Discord. All valid options. Unless something is super personal, people generally aren't keeping any of this stuff a secret, which is very, very cool. There are some games where everything is kept secret, and it makes it a lot more difficult. But then you can also use knowledge skills to figure some of this kind of stuff out too. But it breaks down the 5 seasons and all that kind of stuff. After that, we have Dragons and Descendants, which talks about the history of the Dracon lineage. The Dracons are essentially the law keepers of of Catalosa itself. They're the self-imposed law keepers, and they hold people to the laws that are listed in the rulebook. the intent of these law keepers is not to necessarily pit players against players or to tattletale to the law. The whole point of them is to make sure that there is a system in place so players cannot grief other players into not coming back to the game. I am fine with there being beef between players. I'm fine with there being player versus player conflict and combat against each other. That's not a problem. The big issue is if somebody doesn't like somebody on an out-of-game level and finds a way to try to run them out of the game. That's not fun. That's not fair. We want everybody we want all of the players to feel welcome in the game, not necessarily all of the characters. If your character does bad things to people, generally they should get in trouble for it. We had a rule in other LARPs, either be good or be good at it. So if you are doing bad things and good at covering it up, cool, that's fine. I especially think that's okay. Players doing bad things to NPCs and NPC groups. But yeah, in general, it's just making sure that players don't torture other players for no apparent reason. That is the reason why the in-game law and Dracons are there. But if you want to read up about basic information about the Dracons, the Unceasing, and where all that stuff came from, it is listed there. Next, we have the Catalosa Gazetteer. So we have 3 different articles. We have Zarn, which is the Dwarven lineage's home capital. We have basic information on all of the lineages in the rulebook. It gives a little bit of information. It gives like their home location. It gives generally how they are, but different cultures within the elven lineage can and should flourish. So if you wanted to play a particularly nature-based kind of druid lifestyle culture within any of the lineages, you could. And you can work with us as plot to kind of find out a good area for that to start, or come up with your own and submit it to us, and we'll find a place on the map for it. I'm going to sneeze. Pardon me. Sorry about that. So you don't have to use all of the stuff that we've already put in here. You can come up with your own stuff. Whether that sees light at an event is yet to be seen, but we might. And so it's one of those things you want to keep in mind. Not everybody wants to make their own town or their own group or their own anything. So if you need more direction, pardon me, you can definitely get on our Discord and ask us some questions. The best bet is you can make up a small town based off of your hometown in real life, or an ideal place, or there's a number of things that we can do for you. It's very open-ended. Some people don't like that open-endedness, and that's why I always suggest come and ask us questions. We're here to help. We can help with any of that kind of stuff. I wanted to leave it open on purpose so that people can help build the world out, because I don't think I'm not an expert at real world cultures and fake world cultures or things like that. So I never want to make a different culture's analog and appropriate anything, or be rude or misconstrue anything. So I have come up with the Catalos and base stuff, and whenever it's interacted with in the game, then more of that information will come to light. But currently, these are the 3 big capitals that are around the original town that we ran, which was Boulderton Village. So there was Zarn, Dwarven area, Briarwood, which is the human area, which is in the mountains, and Port Gebetto, which is over near this lighthouse. And the previous in-game area of Briarwood was on the edge of the mountains. It has since been wiped off the map for plot reasons, and I can explain some of that. If there is interest, I'm sure there will be people that will be writing articles and whatnot for the paper, if there's a new paper. But the hope for this upcoming season is for the players to build their own town. And one of the things that we did with the first few seasons of Crestfallen was we had Boulderton Village, which was an already established small town. It had a Dracon presence. It had guilds. It had lineages. It had a lot of resources available. And that was to show how those in-game systems could work for the players. Now the players are building their own town. So a lot of that stuff will be up to the players to whether they want to add it or not. Whether they think it is useful or not, whether they want a big law presence or a small law presence in their area. Yes, Boulderton was wiped out. It was wiped off the map. Oh, sorry. I said Briarwood. Boulderton was wiped out. Briarwood, it's still there. It's right there. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. So there is no name for the new town. The new town is essentially a bandit outpost that a particular group of bandits that were propositioned by the adventurers of Boulderton made available to them. And the hope is that the players will build up this new town, name this new town, and add basically content from the rulebook that they want to see in the town. Whether that's crafting stuff, guild stuff, and whatnot. So I'm very excited to see that, but that all falls kind of on the players too. Yeah. So that is a majority of the content on the website that, in regards to events and in-game stuff. Let's go ahead and get to the rules stuff. Rules in building a character. Some people are very... Hello? Hello? Okay. I don't know why that keeps hiccuping. I apologize. Some people are very math-based in their thought processes and can build characters very, very easily. I'm kind of one of those people. And not only that, there's the second part of character creation, which is making up the story and the content and whatnot. I'm very good at segmenting my thought processes so I can make a bunch of different characters all at the same time. Not everybody's like that. My wife, she is not one of those people. It takes her a while to get into a character, but whenever she does, she gets into that mindset very, very easily. And it's real dedication to that character in particular. But that also means that losing a character and starting a character takes a little bit. So we understand that everybody has a different amount of things that they need to feel comfortable starting a character. We're here to help with any of that. the real thing is that open line of communication between player and the staff, and what that player wants or needs, and some of which we're going to be able to supply, and some of which we're going to say you need to learn in the game. It's not meant to be a jerk response. It's not meant to be an I gotcha thing, but very much like I was saying about the plot, the learning is part of the game. It's not that way in some games. Some games, they beat you over the head with the plot points and you can't avoid them, and you're just along for the ride and you're on the choo-choo train. We don't want to be like that. But we are kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum at this point, where we want the players to do the driving. And if they don't drive, then it feels like there's not as much content there. So whenever you come to one of our events, there's a lot of ways to interact with plot that might not seem as direct as other games. I'll kind of get into that later after we talk about the rules stuff. So building a character, it's on this main rules tab. You'll see there's all of these different sections over here that break it down. When you don't drive, towns explode. Yes, it can. It can. So we had a lot of points where the goblins would come out and do things, and people would deal with the local, like, okay, there's goblins attacking the tavern, so we're going to deal with them, and then we're going to let it go. In a lot of the LARP games, plot will just say, hey, here's the problem, you need to fix it. And we need people to be a little bit more proactive in jumping on some of those things. And that's a learning curve. Like, that's not something that we want to punish people for, but we also want to show that we're different in that sense. So, okay. Making character. You get 60 character points. Now, I know that, yeah, if you look in this first part of the rulebook, it goes over a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about, but nobody wants to read a lot of this stuff. I get it. I read the stuff, but not everybody reads the stuff. Important part, intellectual property. You make your character, you own your character. I don't own your character. You can use your character in your books or your fanfics or whatever you want to use. You own your things. You can't use Crestfallen or Catalosa or any of the stuff that we make for Crestfallen in your books or your content or your things like that. If you're choosing to bring your character in, you own your character, but we're not giving you access to steal our stories. Likewise, some of our storytellers are also authors and whatnot, and they might want to use their story for their own books and things of that nature. They can do that. Perfectly acceptable. How the events of their plot goes in Crestfallen might differ from the way that it works in their books or things like that. And also, they won't generally use your character unless they ask nicely. But we don't have any ownership over your stuff. You don't have any ownership over our stuff, other than the fact that we license the use of your character and our plot stuff to tell our stories. And that's pretty much the main part of that. All of the core in-game philosophies and out-of-game philosophies. Persona guide. This is all of the, hey, I want to make a character. I need to make a character in this game world, or I am a traveler from another game world. You want to make your own hometown cool, tell us about it. If you want to make your character from an established place, cool. We can do that too. But we just need some basic info about your character and we can help out with that kind of stuff. But we don't have a lot of that stuff detailed in the book because I'm not going to write 30 to 40 different cities that we never interact with in game. That's a lot of bloat that I don't think we need. Some people will argue that point. That's fine. Differences of opinion, but yeah. But this section here, so our story begins, tells about the general happenings that went on that caused a lot of the local things. Then it goes on and talks about the different lineages. So the dwarves hail from the city of Zarn. The elves hail from the kingdom of Carnarthon. The Hofflands are a democratic society around the city of Port Gebetto. Humans come from all different types of cultures and are generally from the kingdom of Briarwood. Kinfolk are all animal people and come from a bunch of different areas, but they have different homelands around the area, and they generally have a speaker that takes counsel for them. Then the orcs come from Imshkron, and they have a marshal that leads them. And it talks a little bit about that stuff. Then we have Monsters of Catalosa and talks about kind of what was going on with these monsters. We may need to update that now because next season the goblins are not going to be around as a faction and the undead are not going to be around as a faction. Little information about magic, how it works, essence, all the laws, how justice works. Then we get into how to forge your character. Basically, you have 60 character points. We had that marked down as CP, but that also means a bunch of not good things. We do not mean that not good thing. We mean character points. So anytime we talk about it, we're going to say character points. You can spend those points on your character's lineage skills. You can spend those points on skills in different categories and things of that nature. And this whole section kind of explains all of that. Some people can read it and figure it out real easy and understand, and other people can't because I do blame Discord for that one. But yeah. But whenever it comes to it, some people are really good at building character skills and their lists of the abilities they can do. And basically, that's all this is. This is your character points, and your character sheet dictates what your characters can do within the game world, within reason. There are other things that you might be able to try and attempt that aren't even on your character sheet. And that's perfectly acceptable, and it's worth trying sometimes. But your character sheet determines if combat breaks out, what you can do. And it's the best way to break down that system. So your 60 character points starting allows you to buy skills in different ways. We have the skills list, which breaks each skill down into its specific rules. We have the lineage skill categories, which is a small version of that. It doesn't have everything in there. So if you are looking at a skill, please look at the actual skill on the skills section, not just the lineage breakdown, because sometimes skills have prerequisites and they're not listed on the lineage skill category or the skill category. Okay. There's lots of things you can do as your character. Looking at the lineage skills, one thing that I dislike about some of the current tabletop and LARP thought process is that every lineage or race or species, whatever those particular games use for terms, that everybody can do the same thing equally well. And I disagree with that. There's a certain amount of genetics and cultural training that makes certain groups better at doing certain things. That's not saying that they can't do everything, because you can buy all the skills in our game other than certain specific lineage things. But for the most part, you can buy the ability to do anything within the game system. And so I like that differentiation between a dwarf has certain things that it can do that elves necessarily can't do. And vice versa. I don't want them to be anything major, but little reductions in skills because they're a little bit better at doing X, Y, and Z, I think is fine. So each lineage has its own list of things. That includes humans, which is kind of cool, because not a lot of games have things for humans. But because humans are so adaptive, they get some pretty cool bonuses that none of the other lineages have, but you can see their list is a lot shorter. That's kind of on purpose, because you don't need a lot of costuming to play a human. You're just a human, but you need costuming requirements for all of these other lineages. So if you want to play an elf, you have to have the pointy ear tips. If you want to play a dwarf, you have to have a prosthetic beard, a fake beard. If you have a real beard, that's fine, but you have to have a fake beard over top of it, because humans have beards. If you're a halfling, which is our kind of halfling, hobbit, kender kind of thought process, you should have one or more of the following: a top knot, bushy sideburns, hairy hands or feet, bushy eyebrows, or brightly colored hair. That kind of just transpired in our game naturally, which was kind of neat. And so we added that to our list. Humans, you don't need any particular props. Kinfolk, you must appear as an animal type associated with the kinfolk. So horns, a mask, skin coloration, hair coloration, prosthetics, things of that nature. The ones that we want to make sure we're being careful of, we don't want anybody doing blackface or anything like that. So if you want to play a black cat, make sure you have like a cat prosthetic or paint on whiskers or things like that. We're not trying to be mean or racist or anything like that. Make sure that we have extra props to make sure it's abundantly clear you're an animal person. And then orcs, you can either have tusks or a mask or green makeup. We suggest the tusks, but it's not a requirement any longer, just because it's really hard to talk / enunciate your damage calls with that. So yeah, that's all the lineages. Skill categories. General skill. You can buy any skill in the general without buying the category. You can buy any skill in your lineage, depending on what your character is. After that, your first skill category you get for free. Your second one costs 5 character points. Your third one costs 10 character points. Your fourth one costs 15. Your fifth one costs 20. So on and so forth. So if you try to diversify your character too much, you're losing out on your character points, meaning you can't buy as many skills. So I highly suggest whenever you're playing a new character, try to keep to 1 or 2 of these categories to minimize your costs. But we have 4 combat categories. We have magical combat. This includes energy, which is used to make spells. We have a generic spell list that you can do, but there's also creating your own spells, which is fun and has its own rules. You can build one spell per event that you attend, but you have to turn it in beforehand during registration. And it's not like a guarantee that your spell is going to go through, but we try to work with everybody to make sure that your spell gets approved or not approved, and you have time to work it out. We have a rubric on here if you want to create a spell. It is in the crafting science and technology section, I believe. Nope, email prompts, which is email prompts is right there. Okay, cool. So magical combat, it also has a specialization, which allows you to throw elemental energy in 1, 2, and 3 point increments. You have to choose a specialization between the 4 elemental types: lightning, stone, fire, and ice. We used to have 2 other specializations, but it was determined that the healing one was too powerful, and I kind of agree with that. We had a vote on that, and it makes sense. There are still healing spells and whatnot in the game. After that, we have direct combat skills. These are your fighters. So all of their special abilities are tied to physically being strong and tactical. So breaking weapons, choosing a favored target, slaying, dealing massive damage in one strike, parrying, dodging, blocking things, quarry and rage. You choose a specific monster group or specific monster in particular and deal more damage against them. Direct combat is the only combat tree category, that has the full size shield. So anybody wanting to use a big old shield has to take that. And then physical talent is a special ability that increases the damage of any weapon you use. That is weapon, that is not brawlers, which is like unarmed fighting. But these have prerequisites. Notice you have to have 40 character points in this skill category before you can buy physical talent augmentation. You have to have 80 before you can buy mastery. Any combat items that you pick up from your lineage does count towards those prerequisites, though, in any combat skill. So if anybody has a question on that, feel free, ask. We can clarify all that kind of stuff. After direct is group combat. That is all of your rogues, your tactical. I'm going to stab people in the side rather than directly. It has the special option of opportunist, which if you are attacking a monster with one of your friends, you deal extra points of damage. Most rogues in LARPs had a skill called back attack. Whenever you hit them on the back, you got extra damage, but that led into a lot of people aiming for the spine, which is dangerous. And it also led to attacks where you have to surprise somebody and were they actually surprised and all that other kind of stuff. This category has more of the sneakier type of combat things. So assassinate, dealing a large amount of damage. Counter, which is taking a melee attack but then dealing that damage back at someone. Hamstring, cutting their legs so that they are slowed so they can't run. Stagger, causing the dazed condition. Okay, so Dom's asking, hey Bear, what about pause shields? The ones that kind of cover your forearm. Oh, okay. As long as they're within that diameter, yeah, I don't care what shape it is. Like my turtle shield is strapped to my arm, and it is oval rather than circular. You can totally make a square size shield as long as it fits in that buckler size category. I don't have any problem what shape it is. Yeah, not a problem. And that's kind of why we're loosey-goosey with our terms of like long sword, short sword, all that kind of stuff. If you want to make a katana, make a katana. If you want to make a warhammer, make a warhammer. How you justify that doesn't mean we need to print out a bunch of tags that are different names. So that's why it's like one-handed weapon, two-handed weapon is about as deep we get with it, with the weapon tags. But yeah, you could totally use you could use a punch shield rather than strapping a buckler to your arm. A small punch shield is totally legit for buckler. And group combat has buckler shields. They just don't have the full size shields. And then the fourth kind of combat group we have is, and Dom, as we're going through this, if you have any other questions, just feel free, ask. All good. I'm just trying to get through some of the commonly asked questions that people have been given. Unarmed combat stuff is all like your boxing, your monks, your stuff like that. We use weapons called brawlers, which are smaller weapons with white tape. You can still block with them. We don't have any you take damage on them or anything like that. Taking fighting prowess gives you proficiency in it, so you deal damage with it, and whatnot. So the unarmed tree has all of that like boxing thing, grappling, haymaker to deal bigger points of damage. One thing that some people like, there are 3 different skills that let you swing more, like large amounts of damage, but each one is tied to the core item in that combat skill category. So this one being fighting prowess augmentation, fighting prowess mastery. It's so people can't max out that damage really, really easy unless they're specializing in that specific category. If you spread it out so much, we want it to be a little bit harder. And that's kind of the reason why there are 3 different named things that do similar things. Intimidate causes fear. Pain tolerance, which is a great skill, negates the effects of a condition till the end of the fight, stuff like that. This tree also has strength, which is neat because you can use strength to hold doors or break open doors or break locks and things of that nature. Really cool skill. After the 4 combat categories, we have 4 non-combat categories because we want town characters. We don't want just everybody having combat stuff. We don't want to be a combat-focused game. We currently have been because that's what a lot of LARPs are. But we want people to do different things to have that town flavor. So the thievery skill category is all about deception and things of that. Hello. Okay. Sorry. OBS froze up again. So yeah. The thievery category is all about kind of deception and black market stuff and disguise and escape artist and picking locks and picking pockets. Traps normally are fun for one person and are not fun for the rest of a group. But we're trying to find ways to incorporate them that can be fun in those kind of senses. So we don't have your typical traps, but we have puzzles and things of that nature that kind of mimic those. Core thievery skills is stealth and stealth augmentation. Some people are naturally sneaky. Some people are not, but want that fantasy that they are. So a lot of games have a stealth mechanic where you cover your face like you're holding a cloak over you, and that means you are invisible. So normal stealth, you have to be actually hidden in darkness and like under something or in the wilderness or whatnot. Augmentation lets you move, but you are still restricted in certain ways. And then mastery lets you do that in natural light, but in certain ways too. So it allows you to, even if you're good at the stealth stuff naturally, you have an extra layer of protection sometimes. The merchant skills. Nobody has been doing these, which makes me think that either we need to buff them in some way or change them up. I'm holding off on doing that because I think people are going to find these much more useful now with there being less in town that can kind of give people this kind of stuff. But it still may need some adjustments. But the main thing is holdings is getting free money at showing up to games, like you've made investments in some way and you're getting paid dividends. And supply is the same thing, but you're getting resources used for crafting. There's other cool skills like know a guy, going rate, equal trade. These all allow you to interact with guilds and stuff like that. Okay, my only one I'm not crazy on is haggle, just because there's no way to increase or decrease more than one leaf. Yeah. Okay, so the meat and potatoes on that is I'm fine with it being, I didn't want the, how can I word this on the stream? Okay. So, in the national game how, and I'm using that term because of the possible litigation by the owner of the national game. I have zero problem with Next Gen. I love those guys. They're awesome. Just want to clarify that. So in that game's transformation system, it's wonky because transforms go up, transforms go down if you PvP, that kind of stuff. I have no problem if haggling can reduce the costs by more with NPCs, but I also didn't want a PC doing that to another PC and totally screwing them over and making them upset because like somebody has crafted something and got robbed, highway robbery for the haggle skill. So I am totally fine with changing that one. But I just want to find a way to make it fair. Yeah. No, you can totally use it on PCs. But I want to find a way that makes it fair. Maybe 10% of the cost that was originally stated. Something like that. It has to be something that mechanically works quick and doesn't cause bad blood. That's the reason for that. But I'm fine. Like I would love to talk that out and find some people's thought processes on that stuff. But I love this skill set. If I make another character, that's probably where I'm gonna start. Just because I started, my turtle guy is a crafter. And just because I wanted to help highlight some of the crafty stuff. But yeah. Next is the academic skill list, which is getting a lot of usage. But some of the skills are not. So one of the things we were talking about on our Discord is the history aspects. Oh, and Dom said, not bad. I'm not spec'd into it, but that's just because I've already went down too many rabbit holes. Fair. And that's the thing. Like, I see somebody taking the merchant skill as someone that's going to be a townie, somebody that they want to play more of that noble route, like, oh yes, I have many dealings in this and that, and I get all this money for free and whatnot. I see that kind of character being that guy. We've seen a lot of academic skill use. So each of these skills, for the most part, lets you ask a yes or no question, up to 3 yes or no questions from plot. And this is partially on purpose because we don't want our plot members being stolen by people that want to be told a story. There were often times at other games I ran where a story person would come up to me and we would talk for like an hour, and then I'm not running the event. And that's not cool for all the other players. But it's one of those things, like, you get you're very happy because somebody is interested in your story, that you keep talking on it. So I had to put a hard limit on what questions could be asked and things of that nature. But between games, people can use these skills to get more additional information. So the big thing that we were discussing earlier is on our Discord was the history of Catalosa. It's vague on purpose because we don't want to push a lot of plot points. Almost like you see all of the I'll word it like this. There are times where we load up Marvel Rivals after not playing for a couple weeks, and there's all these exclamation points and all these points that are saying, hey, look at this, hey, look at this, hey, look at this. And you get overwhelmed. And we don't want the players to be overwhelmed because we as plot put out too much. If the players research too much and take on too much on themselves, then that's of their own doing. But there's never a gotcha, like, this is the bad guy of the week, this is the bad guy of the month, unless we want it to be. So the stories of an event might be just the gathering of resources, or the finding out a piece of information, or there are a number of points that you can get to. It's not necessarily always going to be fight bad guy of the week, bad guy of the month, bad guy of the season kind of deal. And that's a big change up for certain games, and a normal kind of gameplay for other games. So it's something that we kind of got to show people. So historical research, deduction, analysis is on items, consultation is on puzzles, deduction is on specific people that you have actually talked to / know. Historical research is on previous events. Magical research is on magic items, stuff like that. Scientific research is on technology. Search area is on actual physical locations. Okay. Then we have 3 different types of medical training. We have doctors in our game, not just magical healing. So if you ever wanted to play that Wild West doctor, you can totally do that. And then our last group is the craftsman skill. We have 3 crafts. We have enchanting, forging, and alchemy. We also have technology, which is after you are a master craftsman, you can learn technology, which allows you to use firearms if you are, is the only way to use firearms if you're not a human. So yeah. So there's all kinds of different options that you can get into in our game that you can build points into. And like I said, the most important thing is we're available to help you narrow it down. We're available to help you kind of build the concept whenever it comes to backstory. whenever it comes to skills, whenever it comes to your physical capabilities, all that kind of stuff. We're here to help. So please keep that in mind. Trying to think if there's anything else. Transportation. I'm going to sneeze again. Pardon me. Transportation. Okay, Dom. What about historical research on different spells or items that were created in the past, however, have been lost over time just due to the player not playing anymore or character is gone? It's a possibility. Whenever it comes to that, if it's a player-led thing, if you already have an idea of what that thing is, then yeah, that's more likely to happen. If it is just picking random thing out of the blue, obscuring. Oh yeah. You can kind of combo use some of the research skills for sure. Historical research is made to be that I want to go back and like, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, but I will kind of hint at it. So whenever it came to the actual historical record stuff, I was very specific that all of the ink left the books. So that means there could be historical texts that are on tablets that are like etched in stone that still exist. There are things that are, there are audio cassettes that might have, yes, absolutely. There might be the audio cassettes that have different audio logs that still exist about historical information. There might be, there's stuff in the database, even though we're dealing way less with the database this season. Database is all technology stuff that got too much push, and we're kind of falling back on that for next season. But there are all kinds of different written records that can still exist that we can put out cool props for, that allow the research people to do translations and things like that and learn that game lore and have it feel really cool and organic, but still get that information out. But yet again, it's I don't want to let too much slip, because then that takes some of that out of perspective type deal. But yeah, so you can use historical research for all that kind of stuff. That's why during events it has to be yes and no questions, and why between events it has to be player inspired things. It's not, hey, tell me the story of this thing. It is, hey, I have done historical research on this particular topic. I've talked with the Knolls. So what kind of historical things might I have learned from the Knolls that are aspects of blah? So I don't want it to be as much of a, hey, tell me a story, unless we as plot are like, hey, here's the story that we're ready to tell you kind of aspect. If there's something in particular that a player wants to research, then they have to player drive that kind of car. Crafting and spells and all that other kind of stuff is all in the crafting science technology area. It shows our tags. It shows all of that kind of stuff. If somebody is interested in that stuff, I can go over that. But that is more complicated stuff. And that sounds like for a different day. Big thing. Everybody should read at least once and review on a regular basis the safety rules section. We have a code of conduct. We have content warnings. We talk about violence and things like that. It's a combat game as well as a crafting game as well as everything else. So we all need to be okay with certain content that is not necessarily okay to talk about in other contexts. We don't talk about real world and real religion stuff. We don't have fake religions. We have paragons, which they are higher powered beings that grant powers. But that is not afterlife stuff. All the afterlife stuff is essence points, and it is very mechanical. It is not dogmatic. We don't like worship a thing type deal. Mental health and mental illness, we talk about that. Taboo subjects, we don't talk about rape, sexual assault, slavery, or child abuse. We try not to include those as part of our plot. Mental health, suicide, and crisis lifeline stuff. We as a LARP are not your mental health consultant. We're not trained in that. Can you use LARP to help with getting over some fears and phobias and working on your own mental health? Yes. But we're not professionals. We never claim to be all that stuff. Sportsmanship, be a good sport. Don't be a jerk. No illegal drugs or alcohol during the course of events. Consent, age requirement. Okay, here's a big thing. And I think we're going to address this at the symposium this year. Currently, all Crestfallen participants must be 18 years or older. We allow 16 to 18-year-olds at events if they are with their actual parent or guardian, not like some uncle or anything like that. We might get rid of the 16 to the underage one. We might not. I'm not 100% sure on it. But there is some debate in regards to that. A lot of our adult players don't want to be babysitters and don't want to deal with stuff like that. Assume consent, clothing requirements. We do require shoes, pants, and shirts for all attendees. That includes males. You have to wear a shirt, just because we don't want to hit our padded weapons on sweaty bodies and then have that contact other people's faces or things like that. It is just a nicety thing. This doesn't mean that you can't, wear more comfortable clothes to go to sleep or anything like that. It is mainly for during combat / all that kind of stuff. Cool. Yeah, I don't want to get into it heavy right now, but we will talk more about all that. Look down mechanic, marshals plot, negotiated role play, okay check-ins, super important. Out of game, pause rule, thievery. You can't steal people's real stuff. You have to steal tags. If the tag is representing like a weapon they are using or stuff like that, you got to steal the weapon, but you have to then return it, because you can't take people's physical stuff. Other things new players might want to know, need to know. I have this article about former LARPers asking them to NPC with us, kind of explaining our different mechanics and systems that we use to kind of make things better / easier / help. Our NPCs are some of the most rested NPCs because of the way our game system is. Some people like our style, some people don't. That's perfectly fine. All good. Some of this stuff is not... we were very idealistic coming up with Crestfallen and talking with some of our previous staff and current staff. And some of the stuff has changed. Having a fully dedicated website and having it updated for our NPCs is really, really difficult. at our current size. It's just not time conducive. So, and also the other thing is, with the way things have gone stress-wise throughout the course of this past year, getting events done early enough for other people to look at, not always possible. If we know we have NPCs that are interested in that kind of stuff, we'll try to help out with that. But because of the way that our events are kind of structured, it's kind of more difficult to do. Symposium stuff is listed on the blog section. Expectations for actors, authors, and players is here. Our attendance cancellation policy, how time passes. Our opening ceremony stuff, playing to win, project design guides, character building advice, playlists, packing lists, all that kind of stuff is listed there. Trying to think, is there anything else you guys can think of that a new player might want to know about? We went over the sites, we went over the event types, we went over multiple times. Hey, if you have questions, ask on the Discord. Basics on character building. Kind of were open-ended on stuff. Rental on props stuff. Oh yeah, building your own props and stuff like that. I highly suggest you come and try to play our game first and borrow our props rather than making your own at first. Lots of people build their own, and their first time they have to throw them away / rebuild them. Just so you get a feel for how we build our weapons and props and whatnot. It's kind of a thing. I went over talking on our Discord. When you're on our Discord, please remember private messages. We don't suggest you use them. They're unmoderated by us. We ran into an issue with that kind of stuff. People have access to other people that they shouldn't have because of our Discord. And then talking with people. If you want to talk about Crestfallen, talk about it on our Discord. Don't talk about it through private messages. If you're private messaging someone, that's between you and them. You're assuming consent at this point. Because we can't moderate everything and everybody. And there are certain modicums of free speech that we don't want involved in. And there are people with different moral thought processes and all that other kind of stuff. And we don't want to talk about any of that. I think you hit most of it. I, as a new player, would have been informed. Not a new player. No, that's fair. Like I said, a lot of it is... A lot of people come to the game and have a lot of valid different questions that I would never expect because I've been playing for as long as I have. So I wanted to hit all the bases and then let people know they can contact us, join our Discord, ask us questions, send us an email. www.crestfallenlarp.com/Discord is our link to our Discord. Our website is www.crestfallenlarp.com. You can email us at crestfallenlarp@gmail.com. Yeah, we are available. And we want it to be as simple as possible to join. We went over all of our different event types. We went over the Tavern Night. I think I might do an actual video on Tavern Night and kind of what to expect. Well, that's hard because this Tavern Night's different from last Tavern Night, different from last Tavern Night. So we'll leave it at that. Dom, do you have any other questions or anything else you want to talk about while I'm still here? Nay, Dade, if there's anything else in particular you think I should talk about or bring up, feel free. add that in, but I appreciate you guys being here too. I'm going to give it a couple more moments. I'm going to see if there's anything on our Discord that anybody has said. I think most of those statements okay. Okay. All good. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm glad it's happening too. That was one of the big debates. Like, I wasn't sure how scheduling was going and the cost of scheduling at Camp One. And Jess from Next Gen, thank you so much, reached out to me and helped us with the scheduling portion of things, which was really, really simple. I just needed I needed to know where to send stuff, and I needed the forms and stuff. And I got that all filled out and all sent in. And so that should all be good. So hopefully we have 3 events booked for next season for weekends. But we won't know till February. And then we'll get our 1 day scheduled and whatnot. But yeah, overall, I'm excited and I'm hoping it works out. Cool. But yeah, I'm just very glad that things worked out a little bit better this year. Nothing seems to be overlapping, which is good. Okay. Bye, dude. Yeah, I'm going to be heading out in just a moment. Seeing as there's nothing else. But you guys all have a great night. New players, I hope this helps. I hope that some of this was informative, or at least explains kind of how we're doing things here and resources you can take for us to help you out. Yet again, we're always available to kind of help out. And I know it's very different for us to not list a lot of the lore-based stuff, but I think it's really important to state we're not trying to give you a bunch of homework. We're trying to be open for the new players. And if you want to learn that stuff, we have that kind of stuff available. It's just, it is find out in game, but it is not intended to be in a jerk way. It is, we have given you resources to find out in game. And we look forward to supplying that content to you whenever you do so. And we're really excited to do that kind of stuff. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks very much for everybody that showed up, everybody that watches this afterwards. I hope it's been useful for you. Yeah. Thanks everybody. Have a great night. And remember, die loudly. We'll catch you next time. Bye, boys.